December 19, 1944. 3:47 p.m. Camp Ruston, Louisiana. Obergefreiter Klaus Zimmermann sat in a wooden barracks with a pencil stub and a single sheet of Red Cross stationery. Outside, American guards played baseball. Inside, Klaus wrote the most dangerous words of his life. Everything they told us was a lie. For 18 months, the Third Reich had told his mother that American camps were extermination centers, that Jews ran torture facilities, that German soldiers were worked to death in mines. Klaus looked at the half-eaten turkey sandwich on his bunk, at the university textbook borrowed from the camp library, at the letter from home that had taken 4 months to arrive, asking if he was still alive. Before we continue with Klaus Zimmermann's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to Camp Ruston, Louisiana, December 1944, where Klaus Zimmermann was about to write words that would crack the foundation of Nazi propaganda across an entire nation. He wrote, "Mutti, I am treated better here than I ever was in the Wehrmacht." Klaus Zimmermann was born in Cologne on March 3, 1923. His father operated a printing press. His mother taught piano. When Klaus was 16, his father printed the wrong pamphlet, something critical of the GAU leadership, and spent 9 months in Dachau. His father returned 20 kilograms lighter and never spoke about what happened. Klaus learned that silence was survival. He was conscripted in May 1942, age 19, height 168 centimeters. The recruiting officer noted, "Suitable for infantry." Klaus reported to the 352nd Infantry Division. They gave him a Carabiner 98K, 3 days of training, and a ticket to France. By June 1944, he was dug into a bunker above Omaha Beach. The invasion came at dawn. Klaus fired 240 rounds in 6 hours. He saw American soldiers fall. He saw German soldiers fall. At 2:30 p.m., a naval shell collapsed his bunker. When he woke up, an American medic was bandaging his head. The medic offered him water. Klaus waited for the execution. Instead, they put him on a truck. Between June 1944 and May 1945, more than 371,000 German soldiers became prisoners of war in American hands. The Nazi propaganda machine told their families a consistent story. Americans were Jewish-controlled savages who tortured prisoners. Letters home were impossible, or so the propaganda claimed. The Red Cross was portrayed as a tool of international conspiracy. Every German family was taught that capture meant death. Klaus arrived at Camp Ruston in July 1944. The camp held 200 German POWs in northeastern Louisiana. The temperature reached 38 degrees Celsius. The guards were mostly older men, unfit for combat duty. The barracks were wood-frame structures with screens for windows and electric fans that barely worked. It was not Dachau. The first man Klaus met was Unteroffizier Ernst Vogel from Hamburg. Ernst was 26, captured in North Africa in 1943. Ernst worked in the camp print shop, his pre-war trade. They gave him ink, paper, and a small press. He produced the camp newsletter. Ernst told Klaus something that seemed impossible. "They let us write home. 1 letter per month. The Red Cross delivers them." Klaus didn't believe him. In training, they'd shown films. American camps with mass graves, starvation, torture. The instructor, an SS officer, had said, "They will work you until you die, then feed you to dogs. Better to fight to the end." But Ernst showed him letters. Responses from Germany, from his wife, from his mother, all delivered through Geneva, all intact. Klaus asked, "What do you tell them?" Ernst looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "I tell them the truth, and that truth is destroying everything Berlin says." The problem wasn't food. POWs at Camp Ruston received 600 calories per day, more than German soldiers in the field by late 1944. The problem wasn't labor. Under the Geneva Convention, POWs could be employed in non-military work. They were paid 80 cents per day in camp scrip. They bought cigarettes, candy, and beer from the canteen. The problem wasn't violence. In 18 months at Camp Ruston, 3 POWs died. 2 from illness, 1 from a work accident, 0 from mistreatment. The problem was that none of this matched the propaganda. Between August and November 1944, the Red Cross delivered 847 letters from Camp Ruston to German addresses. Each letter was limited to 24 lines. Each was censored for military information. But the censors didn't remove statements like "I am healthy," or "the food is adequate," or "I attend English classes." These simple facts were acid to the Nazi narrative. Klaus wrote his first letter on August 12, 1944. He was allowed 1 International Red Cross form, a pre-printed template with blanks to fill. He wrote to his mother in Cologne. His hand shook as he filled in the lines. "I am a prisoner of war in the United States. I am uninjured. I receive sufficient food. I am permitted to write once monthly. Do not believe what you hear about American camps." He gave the letter to the Red Cross representative. An American officer reviewed it. The officer stamped it and put it in a canvas bag. Klaus waited for punishment. None came. 6 weeks later, Klaus received a reply. His mother's handwriting shaky with age. She wrote, "Your letter arrived. I wept for 3 hours. The blockwart says you are lying under duress, but I know your handwriting. I know when you are forced to write something. This was your voice. Are you truly safe?" Klaus stared at that word. Truly. His mother didn't fully believe him, because every Nazi official, every radio broadcast, every newspaper told her that American camps were cruelty centers. One letter couldn't break 18 months of propaganda, but 847 letters could. Ernst Vogel understood this before anyone. He had been writing home since December 1943. His first letters were cautious, neutral statements about health and weather. By mid-1944, he was bolder. He wrote to his wife in Hamburg, "The guards here treat us better than our own officers did in Africa. We receive medical care. We play football. There is a library with 3,000 books. Last week I attended a lecture on American history. I am learning more here than I ever did in school." His wife shared the letter with neighbors. The Gestapo visited her twice. They told her the letter was fake, that Jews had forged it to weaken morale, but she recognized her husband's handwriting. She recognized the inside jokes, references only he would know. She believed, and she wasn't alone. By December 1944, nearly 40 Zauzeren German POW letters were reaching Germany each month from American camps. The Nazi Ministry of Propaganda tried to suppress them. They issued directives. Families who received letters were to report them immediately. The letters would be analyzed for authenticity, but families held on to the letters. They showed them to relatives, to friends. The letters spread like a virus through a population starved for truth. Klaus wrote his second letter in September 1944. He had spent a month at Camp Ruston. He had worked in the camp garden, digging irrigation ditches, harvesting vegetables. He earned 80 cents a day. With his earnings, he bought chocolate and cigarettes. He attended an English class taught by a Lutheran minister from town. He read American newspapers in the library. None of it was torture. In his second letter, Klaus wrote, "Mutti, I eat 3 meals daily. I sleep on a mattress. Yesterday I watched an American film, a cowboy story. Tomorrow I will attend a church service. I miss home, but I am not suffering." When his mother received this letter, she did something dangerous. She showed it to Frau Dietrich, whose son was missing in Normandy. Frau Dietrich wept. Then she showed the letter to Frau Vogel. Frau Vogel showed it to the butcher. The butcher showed it to his brother, who worked at the railroad. By November 1944, 37 families in Klaus's neighborhood had received letters from sons in American camps. 37 letters that contradicted everything Joseph Goebbels said. The Gestapo couldn't arrest everyone. The Nazi response was clumsy and desperate. In October 1944, the Propaganda Ministry released a new directive to all German newspapers. American camps employ sophisticated Jewish psychological tactics. POWs are fed adequately for the first months to extract false confessions. Once propaganda letters are sent, Conditions deteriorate. Torture follows. Trust no letter dated before 6 months of captivity. But the letters kept coming, and they kept describing kindness. Klaus's friend from the neighboring bunk was Gefreiter Otto Lang from Munich. Otto was 24, captured at Cherbourg. Otto had been a medical student before the war. At Camp Ruston, the American camp doctor allowed Otto to assist in the infirmary. Otto learned American medical techniques. He practiced English with the doctor. In January 1945, Otto wrote to his former professor in Munich, "I am learning more practical medicine here than in 2 years at university. The Americans use penicillin, a new antibacterial. It is miraculous. Last week, I helped treat a guard's son for pneumonia. The infection cleared in 6 days. This drug alone will change medicine forever. When I return to Germany, I will bring this knowledge." Otto's professor was stunned. The letter described collaboration, education, treatment of Americans as equals. It was unthinkable under Nazi doctrine. Jews and Slavs were subhuman and Americans were their puppets. Yet here was proof that German soldiers were learning from them willingly. The professor shared the letter with his colleagues at Ludwig Maximilian University. By March 1945, 17 medical faculty had read it. The Gestapo got word. They arrested the professor for defeatism. But the damage was done. The truth was metastasizing. What Klaus didn't know was how his letters were being used. His mother, Sophie Zimmermann, was 61 years old. She lived on Ehrenfeldstrasse in Cologne. The neighborhood had been bombed 4 times, 50 families remained. Most had sons at war, dead, missing, or captured. Sophie began hosting afternoon gatherings. She called them knitting circles. Women would come to her apartment, ostensibly to repair socks and sweaters, but the real purpose was to share letters. Frau Dietrich brought a letter from her son in Camp Como, Mississippi. He described carpentry work, fair wages, a Christmas party where the camp commander distributed gifts. Frau Miller brought a letter from her son in Camp Forest, Tennessee. He described playing in a POW orchestra, 43 Germans performing Beethoven for American audiences. The Americans applauded. Sophie read Klaus's letters aloud, slowly, carefully. She emphasized phrases like, "I am treated better here than I ever was in the Wehrmacht." The women listened. They asked questions. They cried. They passed the letters around, examining the handwriting for signs of forgery. There were none. By February 1945, Sophie's knitting circle had expanded to 19 women. They met every Wednesday at 3 p.m. The Blockwart, the Nazi block warden, noticed. He reported suspicious gatherings of defeatist women to the local Gestapo office. On February 28, 1945, 2 Gestapo agents visited Sophie. They were polite. They asked to see Klaus's letters. Sophie handed them over. The agents examined them, took notes, and returned them. Then the lead agent said, "Frau Zimmermann, your son is writing under duress. The Americans force prisoners to write false letters. You are spreading enemy propaganda." Sophie looked at him. She was 61 years old. She had survived her husband's imprisonment, her city's destruction, and the loss of her youngest son at Stalingrad. She said, "This is my son's handwriting. These are his words. These are his jokes that only I would understand." If the Americans forced him to write, they could not force him to reference the nickname he gave our cat in 1936. The agent had no response. They left. They didn't arrest her. By March 1945, the Gestapo had more urgent problems than old women sharing letters. Between January and April 1945, more than 137 Mauseren POW letters reached Germany from American camps. The volume overwhelmed Nazi censorship efforts. The propaganda ministry tried to intercept them at border crossings. The Swiss Red Cross refused to cooperate. The letters got through. German soldiers in the field began to hear rumors that American captivity wasn't extermination, that food was available, that survival was possible. These rumors had a measurable effect. On March 7, 1945, American forces captured the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen. Over the next 10 days, 25 Haudauer's German soldiers surrendered in that sector alone. Interrogation reports noted that many soldiers mentioned letters from relatives in American camps. One corporal from Stuttgart told his interrogator, "My brother wrote from Louisiana. He said they have a bakery. They make bread every morning. Fresh bread. I haven't seen fresh bread in 7 months. I decided to surrender." The Nazi leadership noticed. On March 19, 1945, Adolf Hitler issued a directive through OKW. Any soldier who allows himself to be captured by the Anglo-Americans without exhausting all means of resistance forfeits his honor. His family will be held accountable. But by March 1945, the threat was hollow. Too many families had letters proving that surrender wasn't death. The propaganda had collapsed under the weight of 137 zero contradictions. Klaus Zimmermann wrote his final letter from Camp Rustin on April 4, 1945. By then, he had been a POW for 10 months. He had gained 8 kilograms. He had completed an English course and a basic accounting course. He had read 37 books. He wrote to his mother, "Mutti, the war will end soon. I do not know when I will return, but I know I will return alive. I know I will return educated. I know I will return healthier than I left. When I come home, I will bring you chocolate. I will bring you real coffee. And I will tell you stories about the America you would never believe. This is not propaganda. This is not lies. This is the truth. I love you. Klaus." Sophie received this letter on June 2, 1945. The war in Europe had ended on May 8th. She read the letter to her knitting circle, now 23 women. They all cried. Klaus Zimmermann returned to Germany in April 1946. He was repatriated through Bremen. The processing took 3 days. He was given a new suit of civilian clothes, 50 Reichsmarks, and a train ticket to Cologne. He arrived home on April 17, 1946, 22 months after his capture. His mother opened the door. She didn't recognize him at first. He was 35 kilograms heavier than when he left. His face was tan. He smiled. She hadn't seen him smile since 1941. He kept his promise. He brought chocolate, 3 bars from the camp canteen. He brought coffee, real American coffee, grounds in a sealed tin. And he brought a photo. Klaus standing with Ernst Vogel and Otto Lang in front of the Camp Rustin barracks, all 3 grinning, all 3 healthy. Klaus found work as a bookkeeper in a textile factory. The accounting course from Camp Rustin had qualified him. He married in 1948, a schoolteacher named Helga. They had 3 children. Klaus lived quietly. He rarely spoke about the war. When asked about his time as a POW, he would say, "I was treated fairly, that's all." But once in 1967, a historian from Cologne University interviewed him for an oral history project. The historian asked, "Do you think the letters from American camps changed German morale in 1945? Klaus thought for a moment. Then he said, "Yes, because they were the first true thing anyone had told us in 5 years. Ernst Vogel returned to Hamburg in June 1946. He resumed his career as a printer. In 1949, he published a small memoir titled Letters from Louisiana. It sold 4,000 copies in Germany. The book was largely ignored by historians. Otto Lang returned to Munich and completed his medical degree in 1948. He introduced penicillin protocols to several Munich hospitals. In a 1952 medical journal, he credited knowledge gained during captivity in the United States for saving an estimated 120 lives in post-war Germany. He never elaborated. Sophie Zimmermann died in 1963, age 80. Her obituary in the Kölner Stadtanzeiger made no mention of her knitting circle. At her funeral, 19 elderly women attended, former members of the circle. They didn't explain their connection. In 1978, the United States National Archives declassified records from the Provost Marshal General's office, the agency responsible for POW camps during WW2. The records included correspondence counts. Between June 1944 and May 1945, American camps processed 871,436 letters from German POWs to addresses in Germany. Of these, approximately 683,000 were successfully delivered through the International Red Cross. No statistical analysis exists on the impact of these letters on German morale or surrender rates. The Nazi government kept no records acknowledging their effect. But anecdotal evidence from post-war interrogations and memoirs suggests that POW letters were among the most effective tools in undermining Nazi propaganda in the final months of the war. The letters proved something simple: that the enemy was not what Berlin claimed, that surrender was not extermination, that humanity persisted even in war. Klaus Zimmermann died on November 8, 1987, age 64 in Cologne. His obituary listed him as retired bookkeeper, veteran of the Second World War. It did not mention Camp Rustin. It did not mention his letters. It did not mention that his words, and the words of 999 other German POWs, had cracked the foundation of the Third Reich's final lie. In 2003, a small exhibit opened at the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum in Shreveport. The exhibit included artifacts from Camp Rustin, photographs, work tools, a printing press. On one wall behind glass was a letter, written in German, dated August 12, 1944. The English translation placard read, "I am a prisoner of war in the United States. I am uninjured. I receive sufficient food. Do not believe what you hear about American camps." The letter was signed Klaus Zimmermann, Cologne. Beneath the letter was a note. This letter and thousands like it helped end the war. If this story moved you, hit that like button. These forgotten acts of quiet courage need people like you to keep them alive. Subscribe to this channel for more untold stories from World War II, and drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from, and if you have a family connection to this war. These stories belong to all of us. Thank you for keeping their memory alive.